Hello, Spilly from Santi Samples, and today we are checking out Haunted Strings 2 Twisted Chamber Strings. Haunted Strings 2 is an evolution of the concept behind the original Haunted Strings, but we've pushed that concept to a whole new level. We've headed back into the studio with a string ensemble and set about recording as many twisted, eerie, dark, brooding, and in some cases outright terrifying performances as we could dream up. One of the key unique selling points in this library is that we effectively treated the entire ensemble from double bass up to violin as one big tutti style instrument. So the air we're capturing here really was moved all at once by this collective of players that really lends itself to a sense of ensemble and allowed for a more intricate and experimental performance of each articulation. Included in the instrument is a collection of long sustained textures, short and aggressive textures, then an additional handful of performance special effects, all designed to tap into a more sinister landscape that simply cannot be recreated with conventional string libraries. In addition to the articulations on offer, there are many other ways to manipulate your sound, from ADSR envelopes to 3 separate processing chains from Pure, which is a mix of the 7 microphones used in the session, to amp and tape processing chains. We also have an abundance of post effects to use with a distortion, chorus, rotary, delay, and reverb. Finally, we have somewhat trademark fear, glitch, and pitch controls found in our original Haunted Strings, but we'll dive into that a little later. Let's get stuck straight into the sounds on offer. So a side note here, all articulations can be simultaneously engaged, so there are endless possibilities to the number of combinations of sounds you can create here. But let's check them out individually to really get a sense of how they all sound. Eerie longs up first. This is our starting point really, the closest you'll get to a normal performance in this library, though the players were instructed to play with a fairly extreme soltasto to get a very warm and whispery, almost ghost-like sound. Hauntingly beautiful texture for creating straight up string arrangements. Before we move on, let's take a look at the fear, glitch, and pitch sections. So fear will dial in the behind the bridge chaos performance effect, where all players gave a collective random performance of bowed notes on these small sections of strings that live behind the bridge of their instruments. You can dial this into taste, to add a hint of uncomfort or to really go crazy toward a climactic moment perhaps. Glitch allows us to introduce a random volume glitching to the overall instrument. An awesome way to introduce some chaos. Finally, pitch will allow you to introduce modulation in the pitch of the notes. Okay, on to twisted longs. Here the players were instructed to perform in an extreme sol pont position, so with the bow very close to the bridge, bringing out lots of beautiful yet chaotic harmonics and overtones. Like the Eerie longs, this too has both non-vib and vibrato performances recorded live. An awesome glassy texture that blends really well with the Eerie longs if we dial some of that in too, to create a fairly lush but still biting and strange sound. Okay, on a decidedly more experimental texture here, Drunken wide vibs, where the players all give a super wide vibrato of nearly a semitone either side of the triggered pitch, with the vibrato getting wider and tighter along with faster and slower in a chaotic random way. As this was performed by the entire ensemble, the mid-range, where all instruments are playing, is full of such a depth of character and complexity. Right, on to Tremolo Punt. This is a fairly rigid tremolo performed in this same glassy position of just above the bridge. A great texture with harmonics popping out on occasion. Now, the erratic trem sol punt. In the same way that drunken wide vibs move between wide and speed of vibrato, the erratic trems do the same with tremolo effect, so we go from slow to fast trem, high and low bowing positions, all adding up to a chaotic, tense texture. Very cool texture there. Now on to the short notes. So staccatissimo first. In order to give this a little more welly and aggression, some players performed this with an off the string start. So really it blends the idea of a staccatissimo and a spiccato performance. You can really hear the players interacting on these performances. There's something special about having them all in tutti like this in a live room that simply layering after the fact doesn't create. Okay, on to ricochet. The players were instructed here to perform with an element of chaos and with a real bite and chop. Okay, Coligno. Awesome texture, that one. You can really hear the dual pitch of the wood. It's almost toy box like with some real bites in the low end. Okay, the final articulation on the main patch is the Psycho Screams. Ultimately exactly what it sounds like. It's a nod to Bernard Herrmann. We couldn't do a chamber strings library centered around eerie, haunting textures without dipping the cap to the king of the genre. In effect, the players slide into the triggered pitch by a semitone with tones of aggression and attitude. Let's take a listen. Very cool. Just before we leave this section, let's check out chord mode 1 and 2. You may recognize this from Neo Strings if you're an owner or if you have just checked it out, but it's basically a set of predefined chords, with chord mode 1 being a series of basic triadic chords and power chords, and chord mode 2 being extended chords with major 7 chords, minor 7 chords, dominant 7 chords, diminished 7th chords, minor major 7th chords, and clusters. Let's take a quick listen to how those ones sound. An instantly inspiring starting point. Right, onto the special effects. This patch is laid out as one big keyboard of sounds. Up first is the behind the bridge chaos sounds. The root note of this sample is on C2 and highlighted in red. Then everything below is simply a pitch altered version, getting down to a very low drop. Such a cool sound, and very creepy when you use the hugely pitch shifted versions. Now the chatter chaos, where all players simply instructed in an experimental way to play anything they wanted without regard for any of the other players. Awesome sound. Again, the root of this sample is in the red and on C4, with everything below being a pitch altered version, which again sounds very creepy and weird. I love it. Okay, onto the scratched riser. This is where all players mute off their strings with their left hands while bowing very hard into the strings, creating a creaking, scratching sound that is quite extreme. As you can hear, that's a riser of sorts, ending quite abruptly. This has also been pitch shifted, but now in both up and down directions from the root on G4. Okay, onto the scratch stabs. So these are the same performance technique as the scratch riser, but now we have one shots, where all players just stab hard at their strings in a staccato fashion. There are 10 variations to play around with. Finally, the string glissandos. We have all 4 strings performed in a purposely pitchless way, with each instrument using simply their own string orders to get a performance. We have fast and slow variations. Okay, that has been an in-depth look at Haunted Strings 2. Head over to insanitysamples.com for more information, demos and videos. Thanks for watching.